Old Testament versus New Testament. Isaiah 7 verse 14 versus Matthew 1 verse 23. What does the Hebrew Bible really say?
Shalom everybody from the Holy Land, welcome back. Today we are standing at the Western Wall, here behind me, and without a doubt this is the holiest place for the Jewish people here in Israel. It is right here where the Holy Temple was standing and where the Holy Temple will be again, soon in our days, God willing. Join me as we dive deeper into the Holy Scriptures. Matthew holds the key, because only he in the first book of the New Testament claims that God himself prophesies the virgin birth in the book of Isaiah in the Old Testament. So we must check that out.
All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us.
This is, by the way, the only place in the Tanakh, that what Christians call the Old Testament, that can prove and gives us evidence if God really promised the virgin birth of Jesus from Nazareth in the Old Testament. The most important dogma in Christianity stands or falls with this specific text from the prophet Isaiah. If this text somehow falls away, then there is no base in the Tanakh for the virgin birth of the Christian Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. When we read the verse that Matthew gives us in the New Testament as evidence for the virgin birth in Isaiah 7 verse 14, only in the English translation and without consulting the original Hebrew text, then it all seems to be correct at first glance. It literally says in Isaiah 7 verse 14, "Behold, the virgin will conceive and bear a son." At the same time, we're only reading and not studying the holy text. We apply irresponsible Bible usage because we ignore the original Hebrew text. If we want to apply a responsible Bible usage, we must study the text from Isaiah 7 verse 14 in its original text and context, and in its original Hebrew language. Today we will first look at the Hebrew text, and in the next video we will look at the context. The virgin birth is an important dogma in Christianity. Because the New Testament claims that Jesus was born from a virgin, he was free from original sin according to the Christian Church. If you missed the first two videos, please check them out first so you can watch this video in its context.
This is part 2. Please first watch the previous video, the Virgin Birth Part 1. What does the New Testament really say about the virgin birth? The Apostle Paul versus the Gospels. By the seed of David or supernatural?
And let me make one thing very clear. It's not important what I believe or what you believe. It's only important what God says. We can only find out what God says in the Tanakh. Christians and Jews both agree that the Old Testament is truly the Word of God. Whatever we believe and whatever the New Testament claims must have a base in the Tanakh. God himself speaks in the Old Testament. When we apply responsible Bible usage and we looking at the text in Hebrew, then we immediately encounter a problem. Namely, that the word virgin does not, and I repeat, does not appear in the Hebrew text at all. Let's read the text from Isaiah 7 verse 14 in its original Hebrew language in the Hebrew Bible. Therefore, the Lord of his own shall give you a sign. Behold, the young woman is with child, and she shall bear a son, and she shall call his name Immanuel. The Hebrew word ha-alma means the young woman. We see that the Christian Bible translators make an essential error here with mistranslating the Hebrew word ha-alma, which means the young woman, and instead of translating the right way with the young woman, the church is mistranslating the young woman into the virgin, while the Hebrew word for virgin is betula. But the prophet Isaiah doesn't use the word betula, which means virgin, at all in the text in Isaiah 7 verse 14. Instead, he's using the word ha-alma, which means the young woman. Such an essential mistranslation of the word ha-alma, which means the young woman, can easily mislead the New Testament reader. Because a young woman, as it is written in Hebrew, or a virgin, are two very different things. The question here is, if God himself really prophesied through the mouth of the prophet Isaiah that the Messiah must be born of a virgin. And is it really correct that the New Testament used this verse from Isaiah 7 verse 14 to prove that God himself foretold the virgin birth of Jesus from Nazareth? It is important to know whether the word ha-alma, young woman, really means young woman and not virgin. How can we be sure that the word ha-alma means young woman? And how can we be sure that the word betula means virgin? As I said before, it's not important what I believe. Who am I? Why should you believe me? You don't even know me. It is important what God, our Heavenly Father, says in the Tanakh. To find out, we apply the clear and consistent method that I learned from my rabbi, Kavod Harav, Rabbi Tovia Singer. Rabbi Tovia Singer is an incredible expert on the Old and on the New Testament. And he explains his method like this. We will look up the word ha-alma, the young woman, and the word betula, virgin, in several places in the Old Testament. And we will take a look how the Christian church translates the same words in these other places. The prophet Isaiah uses the word ha-alma only once in his book, while the word betula, virgin, occurs several times. Look how the Christian church translates this word.
Jewish translation, and he said, "You shall no longer continue to rejoice, O plundered one, O virgin, daughter of Sidon." Betula is virgin. Christian Bible, and he said, "Thou shalt no more rejoice, O thou oppressed virgin, daughter of Sidon." Betula is virgin.
We see that in this text from the prophet Isaiah, the Christian church translates the word exactly like in the Hebrew Bible, in the right way with virgin. Now let's take a look at the text in Isaiah 62 verse 5.
Jewish translation. As a young man lives with a virgin, betula is virgin. Christian translation, Christian Bible. For as a young man married a virgin, betula is virgin.
Also in this verse from the prophet Isaiah, the Christian church translates the right way with the word betula into virgin. Exactly the same as we see in the Hebrew Bible. In both texts, we see that the Hebrew word virgin is betula, and we see that the Christian church is following the Hebrew text. Now an example from the Tanakh, the Old Testament, where the word alma, young woman, is used, and it will be clear that it really cannot mean a virgin.
There are 3 things that are concealed from me, and 4 that I do not know: the way of the eagle in the heavens, the way of a serpent on a rock, the way of a ship in the heart of the sea, and the way of a man with a young woman. Alma, young woman. So is the way of an adulterous woman. She eats and wipes her mouth, and she says, I have committed no sin. Christian Bible. There be 3 things which are too wonderful for me, yet 4 which I know not: the way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. Alma is young woman. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth and wiped her mouth, and said, I have done no wickedness.
We notice in here a very remarkable fact. The Christian Bible translators are following in our examples exactly the original Hebrew Bible. We see clearly that they translate the word betula, which is virgin, in Isaiah 23 and Isaiah 62 with virgin. And they also correctly translate the word ha'alma, young woman, in the Bible book of Proverbs with young woman. But only in Isaiah 7 verse 14, the Christian church translate the word ha'alma, which is young woman, with virgin. This is a very puzzling fact. Before we continue, I want you to stop and let that sink in. Why, O Christian Bible translators, are you translating the word ha'alma, which means clearly the young woman, only in Isaiah 7 verse 14 in a corrupted way with virgin? Why? What do we learn from here? We learn from here that we cannot blindly trust the Christian church and its Bible translators. We always must check the original Hebrew Bible translation, which from Jewish point of view is quite shocking that you cannot trust the translation done by your Christian church. And you really expect us, the Jewish people, to believe in that? Come on, let's be honest. We are talking about on purpose mistranslating the holy words spoken by God Himself? How can you do that? Let's continue. King Solomon compares a man that goes with a young woman, ha'alma, with 3 other things. 1. The eagle's path across the sky. 2. The way of the serpent across the rock. And 3. The path of a ship on the high sea. What do they all have in common? They leave no trace. When an eagle flies through the sky, after you cannot notice because it doesn't leave a trace. After a snake went over a rock, you cannot see it because the snake doesn't leave a trace. Just as a ship sails over the sea and after the sea closes after the ship again, it doesn't leave a trace. Likewise, says King Solomon, a man who has been with a young woman, ha'alma, leaves no trace. You cannot prove if he slept with her, yes or no. And verse 20 shows us that it's about an adulteress. And this is clearly not about a virgin. Because again, a virgin, she will leave a trace. It is obvious from the Tanakh, that what Christians call the Old Testament, that the word alma means young woman. And she doesn't leave a trace. Ha'alma doesn't mean a virgin. Yes, but you could argue that a young woman can be a virgin. Yes, that is true, but if God Himself, through the mouth of the prophet Isaiah, really wanted to talk about a virgin birth in Isaiah 7 verse 14, as the New Testament claims in the Gospel of Matthew, then God would not have used the word ha'alma, which means young woman, but God would have used the word betula, virgin, just like He used the word betula, virgin, in Isaiah 23 and 62. The prophet Isaiah knows very well the difference between ha'alma, young woman, and betula, virgin. And he knows exactly when and how to use it. And here, specifically in Isaiah 7 verse 14, God uses, through the mouth of the prophet Isaiah, the word ha'alma, young woman, and not betula, virgin.
Old Testament versus New Testament. Isaiah 7 verse 14 versus Matthew 1 verse 23. Isaiah, Alma is young woman. Matthew, Betula is virgin.
The conclusion, my dear Christian brothers and sisters, is that the New Testament's claim in the Gospel of Matthew that God Himself would have said that the Messiah will be born from a virgin is false. It is simply not true. It is based on a corrupted translation from the original Hebrew holy text. It is obvious that the Lord doesn't speak about a virgin birth in Isaiah 7 verse 14 at all, like the New Testament claims. Let that sink in, my dear Christian brothers and sisters.
What does the Bible really say?
Again, the purpose of these videos is to explain why the Jewish people cannot believe in the New Testament and in the Christian Messiah, Jesus from Nazareth. We, the Jewish people, know very well our holy Hebrew scriptures. And we know very well the difference between the word ha'alma, young woman, and betula, virgin. For us Jewish people, it's crystal clear that the prophet Isaiah, in Isaiah 7 verse 14, doesn't speak about a virgin birth at all. The problem for our Christian brothers and sisters that they don't have the knowledge about the Hebrew text that is used in the Tanakh, that's what you call the Old Testament. The problem is that you are dependent on the translation done by the Christian church. And we just saw how they translate. The Christian church has their own agenda, but it must be very clear. Nowhere in the Hebrew scriptures, nowhere in the Old Testament, it is written that the Messiah must be born from a virgin. This is a pure New Testament and Christian invention that has no base whatsoever in the Tanakh. How does the Christian church react on this? The church claims that Matthew used the Septuagint. And in the Septuagint, so the church claims, the word virgin is used, claiming that the Septuagint is a Jewish translation of the Old Testament. First of all, for whomever doesn't know what is the Septuagint, the original Septuagint is a Jewish translation into Greek from only the first 5 books of the Old Testament, what we call the Torah. Only the Torah was translated by 72 Jewish scholars. They only translated the first 5 books of what Christians call the Old Testament in Greek: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numeri, and Deuteronomy. And that's it. The Septuagint that the church is talking about today includes the prophets and the writing. That's what Christians call the rest of the Old Testament. This part of the Septuagint is a translation not done by the Jewish scholars. The Septuagint is the official Old Testament used by the Greek Orthodox Church. That includes even the Apocrypha books. The Apocrypha books are only holy to the Catholic Roman Church. The Apocrypha books cannot be found in the Jewish and the Protestant and Evangelical Church. Not in our Bible. This is also one of the reasons that we, the Jewish people, never use the Septuagint in our religious studies.
The Septuagint, as we know it today, comes from Christian copies of the original Jewish Greek translations. It is used by the Roman Catholic Church and includes the Apocrypha or Deuterocanonical books that are not part of the Jewish canon and not part of the Protestant and Evangelical Bible, which includes Tobit, Judith, 1 and 2 Maccabees, Wisdom of Solomon, Sirach, Baruch, Letter of Jeremiah, additions to Esther, Susanna, Bel and the Dragon, 1 and 2 Espas, Prayer of Manasseh. It is very strange that Christians do rely on the Septuagint to make a point, while their own Bible doesn't recognize the Septuagint's canon and writings.
And we just discovered how the Christian Church translating the Jewish Holy Scriptures. So the excuse of the Christian Church that Matthew would have used the Septuagint falls away. Now let us take a closer look at the second part of the verse of Isaiah 7 verse 14 and how the New Testament plays with God's original word and how the New Testament is changing God's original spoken word to make it fit to their Christian dogmas and their Christian belief. Let's compare the text from the New Testament to the text from the Tanakh. And let's look very carefully.
Therefore, the Lord of his own shall give you a sign. Behold, the young woman is with child, and she shall bear a son, and she shall call his name Emmanuel. She shall call his name Emmanuel.
The prophet Isaiah says in the Hebrew text that she will call his name Emmanuel. But the New Testament claims that the angel tells you to call him Jesus.
You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus.
Well, the prophet Isaiah tells her to name him Emmanuel. Two totally different names.
Jesus versus Emmanuel. Luke 1 verse 31, Jesus means God saves, versus Isaiah 7 verse 14, Emmanuel means God with us. New Testament versus Torah.
Jesus means God saves. Emmanuel means God with us. Well, that is a problem. Look what the New Testament does with this problem. Let's compare the text of Matthew carefully with the text of Isaiah.
Hebrew Bible. Therefore the Lord of his own shall give you a sign. Behold, the young woman is with child, and she shall bear a son, and she shall call his name Emmanuel. The New Testament. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel. They will call him Emmanuel.
Firstly, as we already saw, the New Testament translate the word ha'alma, which is young woman, in a corrupted way with virgin, instead of young woman, as it is written in the original Hebrew text. Secondly, the New Testament changes the holy word spoken by God himself through the mouth of the prophet Isaiah for the second time in one verse. Look, God says, she will name him Emmanuel.
Therefore, the Lord of his own shall give you a sign. Behold, the young woman is with child, and she shall bear a son, and she shall call his name Emmanuel. She shall call his name Emmanuel.
But according to the New Testament, Mary never called his name Emmanuel. She called him Jesus, which is a problem because God himself says that she needs to call him Emmanuel. Look how the New Testament solves this problem. Instead of she, that is written by God himself in the Tanakh, the New Testament in the Gospel of Matthew changed this by they.
The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel.
They? What happened with she? They can be everybody, but she should be Mary. And again, she, Mary, never called him Emmanuel. She called him Jesus. And today, we see that really one of the names attributed to Jesus by they, the Christians, is Emmanuel. Again, calling Jesus Emmanuel was done by they, man, and not by she, Mary. But she is out and they is in. Problem solved by the New Testament and the Christian church. But not for us, the Jewish people, that know the original Hebrew text. For us Jewish people, it's most remarkable to find out that the New Testament quotes a text from our holy Hebrew scriptures and makes two changes in one verse in order to make it fit to their dogmas and their ideas. How exactly do you dare to mistranslate and change God's original holy words just to make it fit to your Christian beliefs? And you expect us, the Jewish people, that fully understand the Hebrew text, to believe in this? You cannot trick us with corrupt mistranslations from our own holy scriptures. Me as a Jew immediately need to think about the serpent, the snake, in the Garden of Eden. Do you remember the trick of the snake? The Satan in paradise, in the beginning of the book Genesis. And he also misquoted God's original words spoken to Adam and Eve. Has God not said that you cannot eat from all the trees here in the garden? It was similar, but a complete lie. Eve and Adam ate, and we all know what happened after. This is exactly what the New Testament does. It looks similar to God's holy word in the Tanakh, the Old Testament, but it is slightly and completely different. And in the end, it's a complete lie. To conclude, firstly, from just looking at the original Hebrew text, it's obvious that the prophet Isaiah doesn't speak about a virgin birth at all in Isaiah 7 verse 14. Secondly, the New Testament in the Gospel of Matthew uses the words from Isaiah completely unjustified as a proof for the dogma of the virgin birth, using corrupted and mistranslations from the original Hebrew text spoken by God himself through the mouth of the prophet Isaiah, in order to mislead the New Testament reader. Nowhere in the Hebrew scriptures, nowhere in the Old Testament, it is written that the Messiah must be born of a virgin. This is a pure New Testament and Christian invention that has no base whatsoever in the Tanakh, that what Christians call the Old Testament.
Why do you believe what you believe? Do you believe in the New Testament because it's true? Or is the New Testament true because you believe in it? What does the Bible really say?
In the previous video, we said that Matthew holds the key. But the real key to properly understand Isaiah 7 verse 14 must really be found in the context. In the next video, we will dive into the context of Isaiah 7 verse 14, and this will reveal the real message of chapter 7.
Join me for the next video. Isaiah's 7 verse 14 historical context, the real message unfold.
Don't forget to sign up for the channel so you don't miss the next upcoming video. Please like, share, comment and follow. And from the holy city Jerusalem, here in the western wall, where the temple was and will be, we will bless you. May the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, the God of Israel, bless you in your journey, and may he bring you to the right destination. Shalom from Jerusalem, from the Kotel, the western wall, the site of the temple.